Thank you. And let's start today's meeting. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you again for joining today's meeting. And at our last meeting, we'll review the characteristics of conceptual definition of the SSE and the operational definition and the related issue regarding SSE topology. And today we will hear the presentation from Agnes and Chiara on how the social enterprise should be addressed within the SSE statistical framework. And I'd like to thank you both present for their preparation. And following the presentation, we will have time for the question and the discussion. And this is a meeting agenda for today. And before we begin, let me share a few brief updates. In July, we participated in the ICA CCR conference where we introduced our ongoing technical work and gathered the valuable feedback. Overall, there was a strong support for establishing a clear international definition of the SSE. And the participants emphasized that our goal should be harmonized set of criteria that country can apply flexibly while still enabling standardized international reporting. And the end of October, we will plan to attend the CIREC conference in Bordeaux to present our work on cooperative and the SSA statistics. And during the conference, the IRO will take part in several sessions. And the two sessions, the IRO CIREC partner session and the IRO panel session, will focus on the cooperative and the SSA statistics. And moreover, the IRO Ecuban SSE unit is participating in the JCAS, the expert group on social economy and social enterprise subgroup on data and statistics. And the IRO unit will join the mutual learning workshop on social economy data and statistics organized by the European Commission this employment. And at this place, we will plan to present the work of technical working group and the related initiative in this context. And as we informed by the email, there are two new publications of cooperative statistics that were released in this month. And the first one is implementing the ILO guideline concerning statistics of cooperative. And drawing on the pilot study in Costa Rica, Italy, South Korea, and Turkey and Tanzania, it captured a practical lesson on the concept and definition and identifying corporate type and integrating cooperative into business register and the survey and combining administrative and special purpose data collection. And the second one is measuring cooperative, the second edition. And this information guide is provide practical guidance for ILO member state on implementing the guideline concerning statistics of cooperative. And the second edition update the original measuring cooperative published in 2022 and enhanced with the insight from the 5 country pilot studies. And the both publication were primarily authored by David. And this is a brief update. And before we moving on to our presentation, Hyung-sik will provide a brief overview of the upcoming workshop. Hyung-sik, over to you.
Thank you, Nawan. And before explaining a little bit about our deep dive meeting, just keep this slide. No, because these two publications, I think it's also very important for those who want to start working on the cooperative statistic in your country, because it provides very practical information how you can conduct either as individual research or like creating the national dynamic to facilitate the implementation of the guideline in your country. So if you see particularly about the first one, measuring cooperatives, there are many elements you can be inspired how you can start working on this the important issue in your country. And then also the second the report will provide you one might be the final result from this kind of exercise. So I strongly recommend you to very carefully read these two documents, and if you think you can you want to try to test the guidelines in your country, please let us know. Then we can probably collaborate to for the various front to support you or to collaborate each other, etc. So I think I'd like to emphasize this element. And concerning the deep dive meeting, I would not explain too much because you already received a lot of mail from me on that, and we are almost ready to contact you again on the transport. So just feel a little bit no, we don't need to be pressed. We contact probably from tomorrow. Some of you who need urgently the transport for the visa issue. Otherwise, we will contact you in coming days. So we will, as explained, we will host you from 28 afternoon. And the 29, 30, it would be our meeting, and you can leave 21st October. And meantime, I know already some of you ask, some the excuse to join one or two session of the GSF. So it's no problem, but we need to arrange in advance to find better timing to allocate your role in our meeting. So I will contact you individually on that. So if you have any question about logistics or this deep dive, please feel free to contact me by mail. And in any case, we are all now on the way, and then just you need some more patience to conclude all these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Young-sik. So is there any question before we move on to our today presentation? I can't see any hands up. So then let's proceed to our today presentation. And yes, the floor is yours.
Yeah, wait, I share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so hi to everybody. The idea is to make a small introduction on social enterprises. And this introduction is based on the XM project. So I will present you the XM project, which is a project on the diversity of social enterprise models. And it's a project that has been conducted by researchers from MS, from the MS network. And the two leaders of this project were Jacques de Fourny and Marc Nissens. And so I put the reference of the the paper where you can find all the results in details if you want to know more. So the objective of this project was to develop an analytical framework in order to present all the different types of social enterprise model and to empirically test this framework thanks to a big database that were set up at an international level, including 43 countries. And I will explain you all of this, but the main result was that actually 3 among the 4 models find some strong empirical support in the analysis, in the empirical analysis. So what I will do is first to present the analytical framework, then the data, and finally the results. So regarding the analytical framework, the idea is that Marc and Jacques developed a framework that combine principles of interest and resource mixes in order to identify 4 main models of social enterprises. So the idea is that when we speak about economy, the first type of organization that we generally identified are the for-profit organizations. And those for-profit organizations are driven by capital interest. and rely mainly on market income. Then we all know that actually for-profit enterprise do face market failures, and so this will call for an intervention of the state, and the state is driven by general interest and rely mainly on non-market resources. We can also identify some associations that seek public benefits, and that we can locate it close to this general interest angle, but not really in the angle itself, as generally the general interest, the community they serve is usually a bit, I mean, it's not as wide as the one served by the state. Then there is a third principle, which is the mutual interest. The mutual interest refers to services or goods provided to members under their own control. And so here the idea is that mutual benefit organizations include all traditional cooperatives, which usually rely mainly on market resources, as well as voluntarily association driven by the interest of their member, such as sport clubs or professional association. And here they generally rely more on non-market resources or a hybrid mix of resources. And so based on this triangle, Martin Jacques actually identified four major social enterprise models. And those models are characterized by different institutional trajectories, which can be grouped in two main movements. Actually, there is a first movement, here, this one, which correspond to a shift from capital and mutual interest toward the general interest. So this is the case for social cooperative model and social business model. So first, the social cooperative model. So the idea is that this model differs from the traditional cooperative model in the sense that this organization combines the pursuit of the mutual interest of the member with the pursuit of interest of the whole community or interest of specific group targeted by the social mission. And the social business model here, the idea is that this model is rooted in a business model driven by shareholder interest, but they mix this logic with a social entrepreneurial logic, with the objective of creating a blended value in order to balance and better integrate economic and social purpose. So this is the first movement which generates these two first models. Then we have a second movement. This second movement can be observed among public and non-profit organizations. And this movement is a movement of, towards marketization. Here, the idea is that public organization and non-profit organization were traditionally relying on non-market income. They used to be fully funded by public authorities or mixed public funding with philanthropic resources. But nowadays, they are pushed toward more market-oriented activities in order to complement their existing resources with resources from the market. And this actually generates two additional models. So the first one is the entrepreneurial non-profit model of social enterprises. These organizations are typically non-profit organizations which have developed any kind of earned income businesses in order to support their social mission. And then we have the second model, which I mean, where actually it's public sector. I mean, this model is public sector social enterprises. I mean, it's how they called this model. And this model emerged as public sector spin-offs. So, for example, in the framework of community development policy, you can have local public bodies that take the lead in setting up community enterprises seeking for local development. This would be a case of public sector social enterprises. So yeah, there are these four main models. I mean, it's theoretical models that they have identified. And now the idea was to see to what extent it was possible to find some empirical evidence of the presence of those four models. And so what they did, they actually developed a big questionnaire with five main dimensions. So one dimension concerned the general identity of the organization, another dimension concerned the social mission, another the workforce composition, the financial structure, and the governance structure. And this and the idea was to use this main big questionnaire to collect data from social enterprise a bit everywhere around the world. And so what they ask, actually, they ask to researchers from AMS to choose 3 to 5 social enterprises that they consider as emblematic of each social enterprise type identified by themselves in their own country. Okay. So obviously it cannot be seen as a sample representative of the world population of social enterprises around the world. And here you have the figure. I mean yes, some figures. So the idea is you can see the number of countries which participate to this project, and the number of social enterprises from which researchers have collected data. And so what they did, they actually did a multiple factor analysis, and then a hierarchical cluster analysis, and they kept 7 clusters. Here you can see the hierarchical clustering that they obtain. And yeah, they identify 7 clusters. And so I will show you a bit more those results. So here is the reference if you want to know more about this project. But yeah, okay, so here you can see actually the 7 clusters. And they consider that 2 clusters indicate the existence of a social cooperative model of social enterprise. So it's the 2 clusters that are put I mean in the circle in the slide. So one of these 2 clusters actually regrouped cooperatives that are characterized by a variety of social mission. For example, but all the productive activity are meant to serve strongly oriented social objectives. And for example, they aim at creating jobs for unemployed, at generating income for poor people, at pursuing community development, at addressing ecological issues. I mean, it's all those type of social missions. Whereas in the second cluster, they actually obtain cooperatives that mainly provide financial services, so mainly microfinancial services. Alors, for those two clusters, the economic model is characterized by the fact that a lot of their income actually come from the market. Regarding the governance, they have democratic governance structures, and they generally also involve other stakeholders than just the members looking for their mutual interest. And concerning allocation of profits, they have a limited allocation, I mean, possibility to allocate profits, and generally it's even more limited than in traditional cooperative. Then they found one cluster that indicates the existence of a social business model. So this cluster regrouped mainly small and medium enterprises that combine strong business orientation with a social mission. This organization have less regulated frameworks than those defined by the governance rules in the cooperative type of social enterprise. And the governance can be described as capital interest oriented, or in some cases as independent ownership and management when the social enterprise is in the end of one single person. Then they identified, I don't know if you can see, there is the, sorry. Do you see the, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I have the, wait. Sorry, I have the picture in front of my, I mean, the camera in front of the, well, sorry. Can you see the screen well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So here we have 4 clusters that converge toward an entrepreneurial non-profit social enterprise model. So the idea is that those 4 clusters, organizations that are in those 4 clusters, they have typical non-profit organization governance features. As you can see here, so mainly democratic governance with limited profit distribution. Then if we look a bit further, we can see that actually 2 of the 4 clusters, in 2 of the 4 clusters, the organizations was mainly driven by a mission of employment generation. And so those organizations can be seen as WISE, so work integration social enterprises. And in one of the 2 clusters, actually, the legal forms are much more diverse than non-profit organization, whereas in the other cluster is especially non-profit organizations. But even if in the first one you have legal forms that are much more diverse, in most of the case, the organization has been launched by a parent third sector organization or by citizens. And then the two other cluster, which are the two other cluster that is grouped in this entrepreneurial non-profit model, actually cover a wide spectrum of social missions. In one of them, they found organizations that mainly focus on local development, whereas in the other one, it's mainly, they are mainly organizations that focus on health and social services. But for both of them, for organizations belonging to those two clusters, generally less than 4% of their income come from the market. However, they have been identified by as social enterprise by the local researchers. So to conclude, what can we say? First, we can see that three among the four models find empirical support. They didn't find any support for the last model, which was the public and semi-public social enterprise model. They actually stress that it might be linked to the perception of social enterprise by the local researchers. The idea is that many of them probably considered a priori social enterprise as private enterprise, private entity by nature, and therefore disregarded public sector initiatives as potential social enterprise. And another important element was the fact that in contrast to the view highlighting that social enterprise can be seen as market solution for social problem, actually half of the organizations that were in the sample have a very hybrid financial structure with less than 50% of their fundings that come from the market. And the last slide. So the result also tends to demonstrate in a structured way that social entrepreneurship can actually emerge from all parts of our economies. And they also highlight that the social mission is really central, and that social enterprises can pursue a wide variety of social missions. And so here you can also find additional materials. They actually conduct specific study per area of the world, and then this main big study combining all the data that they could collect. So I will stop sharing my screen, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Agnes, and thank you for the insightful presentation, which provide us the rich comparative perspective on the diversity of a social enterprise model worldwide. And before we move on to next presentation, is there any question for clarification regarding the presentation? I cannot see any hands up. And if you missed the opportunity to ask the question, we can come back to question at our general discussion session. So I cannot see any hands up. So then I'd suggest to move on to our next presentation. Kiara?
Maybe Simel. I saw Simel.
Oh, okay, okay.
I couldn't,
Simel,
I
I'm sorry.
couldn't find the hand. I was doing physical hands.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry. Simel, please go ahead.
We have the PowerPoint for Agnes, no? Thank you, Agnes.
Yes.
This was a very interesting, very insightful presentation. And I may have missed it. Have you done a clarification around like the legal registration, legal form? Was that part of your analysis framework? And sorry if I missed that, but what was I understand definition was something that was not so much what you were concerned about, but legal recognition is something I'm asking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the idea is that they indeed didn't have a specific definition of social enterprise, and they based their study on the own definition that each researcher had. And so the idea was to really take into account the specificity of each countries and not like reduce the scope a priori, and really let each researcher to define which social enterprise they thought was important and relevant for their own countries. But then, yes, they ask in the questionnaire, they ask the specific legal form of each of those organizations. And so when they did the cluster analysis, the cluster analysis, the idea is that it group organizations that are close to each other. And then you have to see, okay, actually what is in that cluster? And you can find in one cluster different type of organizations, but if they are close to each other, it should be because of some features that are more important and that they make them close to each other. But indeed, they looked at the different legal statutes. And so the idea is that in the cooperative, the social cooperative models, it's mainly organization with a cooperative status. But you can have, for example, some organization that would be informal but working totally as a cooperative, or non-profit organization but having the same rules that cooperative, the same rules as cooperatives. The idea is that those organizations were not grouped together according to the status a priori. So it's really the analyze that group them, and then they could see, okay, in that cluster we have mainly co-ops. In this one, we have mainly non-profit organizations, but also some foundations, for example. And in the paper, it's more detailed, and you can see that for each clusters, they explain a bit more how much, for example, cooperative or non-profit or foundations, or different type of organizations, legal statute they could find in each group.
Okay.
I hope it's clear enough.
Yes, I think so. Because we are norm setting, we are trying to capture, right? Because we did the universal definition of the SSE, and what we did was look at the legal form. So we are trying to do something similar, and to do a statistical definition of SSE, we need to be able to say these are the boundaries for each of the entities under it, right? The question is there an emerging enterprise form for groups of countries? For instance, in Southern Europe, it tends to be social co-op, or in Mercosur, it looks more like, I don't know, association. And in East Asia, it is looking more like, foundation. So we can at least then, based on that, go or look at some, build it on regional or sub-regional kind of specificities. We need some way to hook onto it.
Yeah. For example, they said that for Latin America, the dominant model is the cooperative one. So there are some regional specificities, and I could share those with you.
Okay.
Indeed.
Okay.
But the idea was that, okay, it's not an analysis based on legal status, because you can have organizations that have different legal status, but actually work very similarly. And it's more really the type of governance, to what extent your limit the profit distribution, I mean, all those different features that drive the analysis. And then they looked, okay, in this cluster we can find mainly cooperatives, but for example, in the entrepreneurial non-profit model, you can have non-profit organization, but also some cooperatives, also some companies, some foundations. So the idea is really, it's not first based on the legal status, indeed.
Thank you, Simir and Agnes. And Marie, do you have a question, or is the answer to the Simir's question? Yeah, Marie, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Anaïs, for your presentation. It's very clear and very relevant. To complement your answer to Simir's question about a dominant model per country or per region, we have to recall that the EXEM project cannot bring such information, as it was conducted on a voluntary basis by researchers. They picked their own case studies as they wished. There is no quantitative analysis of numbers, and there is no population from which to extract a dominant model. So it's really what we could call an exploratory, a wide scale, very large exploratory study, but you cannot deduct that this will be the dominant model in any case, because there's an obvious publication and selection bias to whatever case studies were conducted.
Yeah, indeed, you are totally right. Actually, it's based on their sample, indeed. So, for example, in the section, I didn't conduct the study myself. It's really the study conducted by Jacques and Marthe. I participate a bit to this study, but the idea is that, for example, in the regional specificities, they said, okay, for example, the cooperative type, especially worker cooperative, constitute the dominant social enterprise form in Latin America. So it's based on their own sample. And this is especially, I mean, you're totally right. And it's very important to stress the fact that it's not a representative sample. It's strongly, biased by who are the researcher and what are their own conception of social and of the social enterprise, and by the fact that is those type of researchers that are member to the MS network. So it's totally, I mean, you are totally right. It's not representative of the world social enterprise. Indeed, it's strongly biased by the DMS community and also the vision of the DMS community. And so it's a more exploratory, indeed, study. Totally right.
Thank you, Agnes. Yes, Marie?
Just to complement, I think, though, that what we have in this study is very good models from which we can explore the social enterprise world and probably sort or help sort which of these social enterprises would be part of the SSE as defined by the International Labour Conference.
Thank you, Marie. And is there any want to comment or question if you don't have?
David.
David.
Oh, David, sorry. I keep missing the hands. Okay.
My
David,
apologies. I couldn't find the button to raise my hand electronically, so I did this. I'm not the first person.
Sorry. Yeah.
Just continuing this discussion on sort of what's the dominant model. I think we need to consider dominant in what sense? Dominant in terms of the financial turnover, in terms of the number of people it supports, the number of people who are employed. It's quite a difficult thing to determine, or simply the number of establishments involved or enterprises involved. When we're looking at dominance, there are a number of different factors that we can consider. So I think that's also quite an important way of looking at things. So it doesn't mean that if there's only a small number of a particular type of social enterprise that they're not important. If, for example, there's a large turnover of money, a large number of people supported, or a large number of people employed, and various other factors. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your the thing we need to consider when we think about the dominant something. Yeah. Then I think it's time to move on to our next presentation. Chiara, please go ahead.
Sorry, I need just to share my screen and I have to find. Okay, so can you see my screen, my presentation?
Yeah, but not full screen. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it full?
Yeah, it's full now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Anais, for your presentation. It was really interesting, and I think it was good to start with presenting the results of the XM project because it provided the information and background for our work. As Nawon and Yunsik already said, today I'm here to give you a brief presentation of the reflection we are making concerning social enterprises when we talk about statistics on SSE. So as Anais already showed, there is a large diversity of models of social enterprises around the world. And probably there is no an agreed definition of what a social enterprise is. And we can discuss about this probably for weeks and months. But probably we should also remember that our goal, the goal of this technical working group is not to define, provide an agreed definition of what a social enterprise is to reflect, as Maria already mentioned, on which are the taking into account the diversity of the models, we have to reflect on which are the social enterprises that can be considered in scope when we talk about SSE and when we talk about SSE statistics. And to do so, we have to start from the ILO definition and the ILO values and principles, which are stated in the ILO definition. We already talked about the ILO definition in the last meeting, so during the meeting we had in June, but just to recall it. So the ILO definition include list of entities, so statistical units that can be considered part of the social and solidarity economy. And this list includes cooperatives, associations, mutual societies, foundations, social enterprises, self-help groups, and other similar organizations if these different entities adopt SSE values and principles. And the ILO definition also provides a list of principles and values. And these are the values and principles that you can see on the right. So serve a collective and general interest, the voluntary participation and mutual aid, and voluntary participation, democratic and or participatory governance, autonomy and independence, and the primacy of people and social purpose over capital. So we are working on this definition to move from the institutional definition to the operational statistical one. And today we are focusing on how to identify in scope social enterprises by using the operational criteria that cover these values and principles. So probably talking about social enterprises, we should start from a statistical definition we already have. In the system of national accounts, the 2025 edition, we have a definition of social enterprise. So according to the system of national accounts, we have a thematic account which is focused on non-profit and related social economy institutions. We already mentioned this during the June meeting, and we saw that this thematic account also provide a list of operational criteria that can be used to identify in-scope unit. And we already discussed the fact that looking at criteria from B to E, these criteria, so from B to E, cover partially the ILO principle and values. Within this thematic account, there is also an operational definition of social enterprise. So according to the system of national account, a social enterprise is defined, as you can see on the slide. And I have highlighted the three key features that define social enterprise according to the system of national accounts. So first of all, a social enterprise is an enterprise. And if you look at the SNA, you will find also a definition of what is an enterprise. So an enterprise is an institutional unit engaged in the production of goods and services. It may refer to a corporation, quasi-corporation, a non-profit organization, or unincorporated enterprise. So we are talking about enterprises, and we are talking about enterprises that act for purposes of employing and training disadvantages individuals, for supplying products of special social values, or for serving disadvantaged persons in other ways. So basically, the SNA definition provides a list of purposes of the activities that can be used, that social enterprises usually covers. Probably one point of discussion could be whether this list of activities covers all the full range of activities that could fall under the social enterprises. And then we have the last key feature, which is used to define social enterprises in the SNA. And this is the fact that social enterprises are considered non-profit institutions in the case they do not distribute profits among owners and or stakeholders. So there is a full non-profit distribution constraints, but the definition also introduced a partial constraint, saying that also social enterprises that distribute a restricted portion of their surplus to owners or stakeholders can be included in this thematic account. And if you look at the definitions provided within this thematic account, you will see that by saying restricted portion, the SNA is saying that basically the social enterprises can distribute less than 50% of their profits. So regarding this feature, this criterion, maybe we can discuss whether this is good criterion that can be used to operationalize the ILO principle of primacy of people over people and social purpose over capital. So these are the three key features of the definition included in the SNA. If you look at the three key features, you will notice that there are no references, there is no reference to the democratic and/or participatory governance of the organization. So we are missing one of the criteria of the ILO definition. So starting from these questions and starting from the type of activity that can be covered by social enterprises, Anaïs already talked basically about this in her presentation. So we have the question of which activities can be pursued by social enterprises is, I think, is linked to ILO Principle 1. So the type of interest which is pursued by the social and solidarity economy. Principle 1 refers to mutual and or general interest. And by talking about social enterprises, I think we are focusing on the general interest. This is consistent with the literature on social enterprises, but this is also consistent with the legislation on social enterprises that we analyzed in 18 countries. So we took the legislation of these 18 countries, and you can find the complete list of the 18 countries at the end of this presentation. And we looked whether the general interest is explicit mentioned in the law. And what we found out is that this principle is mentioned. There is a reference to this principle. The terminology that is used across the law is different. So the interest pursued by social enterprise is defined using different words across the laws. Sometimes you can find a reference to social interest activities. Sometimes laws refer to activities in benefit for the community. And sometimes you can find specifically the term general interest activities. Moreover, some laws, the level of details in explaining the meaning of social interest, general interest, activities in the benefit of the community. So the level of detail of these concepts is very different from law to law. In some cases, we have a specific list of sector of activities and type of activities that are considered to be in the general interest or in the interest of the communities. And by comparing this law, it's also clear that there are some differences in the list of activities, which is also related to different local needs. And so in different local perceptions of what is part of general interest. So to summarize, talking about the activity that can be pursued by social enterprises, we are basically screening the first ILO principle, and we are looking at the general interest defined within the principle 1. Moving to the democratic and or participatory governance, we already talked about this principle during the meeting we had in June. As we said, it's not covered by the operational criteria proposed by the SNA. And also in June, we said that probably this is a main issue for non-member-based organizations. And this is also true for social enterprises, as Anaïs already mentioned in her presentation. So looking at the different laws and different jurisdictions, social enterprise does not refer to a specific law, a specific legal form. In different countries, when you talk about social enterprise, you are referring to a legal status that can be applied, can refer to different existing legal forms. So we can have social enterprises which are cooperatives or associations, basically, which are member-based organizations. And in this case, it's easier to screen this principle, empirically screen this principle, because the law on this type of organizations already grant members voting rights or provide members other decision-making powers. We have major issue when we move to non-member-based organizations, but also in this, we can have social enterprises which are formed as non-member-based organizations. In this case, we analyzed the law in the 18 countries I already mentioned, and we found out that in these cases, in most of the countries, there are mechanisms which are explicitly mentioned in the law and which require the involvement, consultation, and participations of worker, user, and other stakeholders. So in the countries in which there is a law on social enterprises, the law requires this involvement, consultation, and participation process of different stakeholders. My question here, and I would like to discuss with you this question, is whether this requirement by law is enough to filter the in-scope units, and what we should do in the case of countries, or in the case we do not have a law on social enterprises. Are we looking to articles of associations of a different enterprises? Are we looking for requirement established by laws? So how to filter the democratic and or participatory governance, especially in those social enterprises which are formed as non-member-based organizations. And then moving to the primacy of people and social purpose over capital in social enterprises. So, Anais already mentioned this, so the non-profit, some kind of profit distribution constraints, and also the SNA definition mention and use the non-profit distribution, the profit non-distribution constraints to as a criterion. And I have to mention that this criterion is, in the literature, it's widely seen as a mechanism to avoid profit maximization and profit maximizing behavior. The total distribution constraints is one of the fundamental criteria to identify non-profit institutions within the SNA. But the literature also shows that we can have partial or limited distribution constraints in the case of social enterprises. And even though this constraint is partial, the fact that the constraint is partial does not compromise the ability of the social enterprise to safeguard the primacy and the primacy of the people over the capital. Just to add more information about this type of criterion, we should also say that there are different types of constraints on profit distribution. I already mentioned one, so we can have total constraint or a partial limited constraint. But on the other side, we can see that a constraint on profits can be a short-term constraint, meaning that profits, there is a cap on dividends, or dividends are not distributed at all. But it can be also a long-term constraints, and in this case, we are talking about asset locks, meaning that in the case of dissolution, the assets of the enterprise are not distributed among owners and stakeholders, but the asset lock makes sure that the assets are transferred to another social or community purpose. So we have this distinction: short-term distribution constraints on one side, long-term on the other. We have a distinction between constraints which are provided by law or which are explicitly provided within the documents of the enterprises. We can also talk about constraints which apply to owners only or which are referred also to other stakeholders. And we should also take into account that we can talk about direct profit constraints distribution, but we can also talk about indirect profit constraints distribution. So taking all this information into account, we looked at the different laws on social enterprise in the 18 countries in which we found a law on social enterprises, and we looked for profit distribution constraints in the laws. And we found out that basically in 4 out of the 18 countries, we have a total profit distribution constraints. In the other 14 countries, we have a partial. And as you can see from this table, the partial distribution, we have different cases. We can classify the different countries in 3 different categories. So we have a group of countries in which we have basically a short-term constraints, referring to dividend cap. And then we have a major group of countries in which we have both short-term and long-term constraints. In this large category of countries, we have 2 subgroups, and the difference is that in the second group, so in the last row of the table, we can find those countries in which the law provide explicit restrictions, not only on direct profit distribution, but also on indirect profit distribution. And this is the case for Cyprus, Denmark, Italy, Luxembourg, Malta, and Romania. So basically all the laws of the 18 countries provide in some ways regulations and restrictions on profit distribution. The differences are on how this profit distribution is regulated. And looking at a European study which was carried out in 2020, it seems that the most successful approach in covering the general interest and primacy of people over the capital is the combination of both short-term and long-term constraints, meaning the use of both cap on dividends and asset lock. So considering all this and the reflections we made looking at the literature and the empirical evidence we got from these laws, we consider that the non-profit distribution constraint can be the operational criteria to filter the social and solidarity, the social enterprises. But in doing so, probably we have also to keep in mind that we have to establish a 2-step procedure. And this is due to the fact that, as I already said, social enterprises may be formed and constituted in large in different legal forms, and probably, and not probably, some of these legal forms are already part of the social and solidarity economy. So in screening the primacy of people and social purpose over capital in social enterprises, what I'm suggesting is to use this two-step procedure. First of all, check the legal form used to establish the social enterprise. So we have step one. If it's legal forms already included in the SSE, meaning associations, foundations, cooperatives, and mutual societies, we have to consider the fact that these social enterprises will be already included in the perimeter of SSE because they are established according to legal forms which are already part of SSE. And talking about the primacy of people, if we talk about associations and foundations, we already talked about this, they are generally treated as non-profit institutions, so there is a full profit distribution constraints in this case. If we are talking about cooperatives, we can refer to the ILO guidelines on statistics on cooperatives, and according to the guidelines, a cooperative must distribute profit and surplus using in a way which is not linked to capital contributions. And moreover, we have to mention the fact that patronage refunds, which is a typical way, patronage refunds are not to be considered profits. If we talk about mutual societies, we do not have standards on this, but we have to mention the fact that the SNA, so the System of National Accounts, defined mutual societies as similar to cooperatives, so we can use the criterion mentioned for cooperatives. So basically what I'm saying is that if we are screening social enterprises and we are looking at social enterprises which are established in one of these legal forms, probably we are facing an easier situation because as associations, cooperatives, and mutual societies, they are already part of SSE. For sure, I'm saying that probably some of these social enterprises will be established as associations, cooperatives, and mutual societies. I'm not saying that all associations, foundations, cooperatives, and mutual societies can be considered social enterprises. And we will go back to this point later during the presentation. So step one, looking at legal forms already included in the SSE. Step two, other legal forms. So if a social enterprise is established in another legal form, screening process should be based on the presence of a dividend cap and asset lock. So should be based on the presence of both short and long-term constraints on profit distribution. What I would like to discuss with you, whether you agree on this approach, you agree on the use of profit distribution constraints to screening the primacy of people and social purpose. If not, what are other possible criteria? And the other question I would like to discuss with you is whether we should establish a minimum threshold for the dividend cap. As we saw in the SNA, we have the threshold of the 50% social. So for SNA, social enterprises can distribute less than 50% of the profits. Should we introduce a threshold? Should we or not? And finally, moving to the last point and last issue. So in the previous slide, I was talking about how to screening social enterprises to understand whether they are in scope or out of scope. And probably we should also face another issue. As I said, social enterprises legal status in most of the country, it's not in most of the country, it's a status, a qualification that can be applied to different legal forms. So probably some social enterprises will be counted as cooperatives, as mutual associations, as foundations and associations within the SSE. But what about counting the total numbers, so providing numbers on the social enterprises within the SSE? What I'm suggesting here is to basically we need to reflect on cooperatives, mutual societies, association, foundations. And as I said, not all these entities can be considered social enterprises. Some of them can be considered social enterprises. And what we need to do is to reflect and define the criteria that qualify these type of entities as social enterprises within the SSE. Okay, so we have 3 different legal forms. In the second column, you can find the institutional sector in which these different legal forms are counted within the national accounting, in the national accounts. So cooperatives are included in the corporation sectors, which includes both financial and non-financial corporation sector. We have the mutual societies, which are only due to the type of activity they carry out, they are only included in the financial corporation sectors. And then we have association and foundations, and as I said, they are treated generally as non-profit institutions. And according to SNA, we can find non-profit institution across different institutional sectors. We can have non-profit institution in the corporation sector and in the non-profit serving household sectors. So we have these criteria. We have these 3 different legal forms. They are part of the social and solidarity economy if they fulfill the operational criteria we were discussing during the last meeting. But when can we consider these legal forms also social enterprises? So for cooperatives, as they are already only included in the corporation sectors within the SNA, they are market producer. And so they are market producer. To be considered social enterprises, we should look at the type of interest they are pursuing. So according to the ILO principle number 1, we have the mutual and or general interest. And to be considered social enterprises, cooperatives should pursue general interest, not only the mutual one, and should be subject to the profit distribution limits as I already presented in the slide before, so dividend cap and asset lock. As I said, mutual societies are similar to cooperatives, so to be considered social enterprises, we have the same criteria. While we have different criteria for association and foundations, because in the case of association and foundations, we have, first of all, to exclude non-market producers, and we can exclude the non-market producer by excluding the institutional sector 15, which refers to non-profit institutions serving household. And then we have to test the general interest mission of this type of organizations. So if cooperatives, mutual societies, association reflects the operational criteria we were talking about during the last meeting, they can be considered part of a social and solidarity economy. If they reflect the operational criteria covering the ILO principle, and they reflect these additional criteria, then they can also be considered as a social enterprise. This is the last point I would like to discuss with you. At the end of the presentation, you can also find some main references I used for this work. And as I said, you can find the complete list of laws on social enterprises I analyzed. That's all. So I can give the floor back to Nawon, or I can open the stage for comments.
Okay, thank you, Chiara, for your presentation to help us to how we position social enterprise within a broader SSE framework. And we are a little bit due to the time constraint, I propose to proceed our general discussion, including any clarifying question and the question mark we left in chat box. Hyung-sik, over to you.
Yeah. So let's start by having any clarification questions. So Simel and Yannick.
Maybe it's answered, but I need still to hear it. It didn't register, and that's from the XM to Chiara's presentation. Thank you, Chiara. I mean, very good work in helping move forward. Primacy of people and social purpose over capital, but in the definition, but it's in the distribution and use of surpluses and or profits as well as assets. Now, how much does that take into consideration external financing? Because I think what was coming out from XM and a concern for us, I think in moving with the definition is like the investors being the majority financiers of something, of a SSE initiative, and that falls outside, right? And we need to know the cutout point for that. Is it 50%? Is it like investor owned 51%? Is it out? Or is it 33%? What's the cutout point? And then if it's government, same, the government is like, and there are, as you know, many of these instances where government has, weighted financing on this. And I think going to the NGO side, association side, there is that donor, especially in the countries where we work, where with organizations that identify themselves as part of SSE as associations, there's a huge donor dependency. Again, there is it 51% above? Is it less? Maybe this has been answered and I'm not getting it. Thank you for humoring me.
Thank you, Simel. Yeah, Yannick, please. You are still muted.
Oh, okay. Should be okay now?
Yeah.
How can I say that? I'm not very at ease with the presentation. In my vision, in the social and solidarity economy, you have certain kind of enterprises, and I'm speaking on behalf of mutuals, and in my spirit, the mutuals are included in social and solidarity economy, and there are some social enterprises with a specific legal form, and this specific legal form, to be considered as part of the social and solidarity economy, must have certain criteria. So I don't think that we need or that we should mix the two concepts and try to see if a mutual is a social enterprise. We don't want to be social enterprise. We are not social enterprise. We are mutuals, and we are member of a social economy. So I think maybe it could be the same thing. I can't speak in behalf of cooperatives or association, of course, but I think in my vision, it could be the same thing. The fact that mutuals, cooperatives, and social cooperatives share some value, some constraint on distribution and so on, and some general interest purpose, I'm totally agree with that. But I think that we don't need to mix the concept. I think it would be more confusing than helping. I don't know if I'm clear, and maybe it's a little bit too straight to the point, but we can discuss later.
Thank you, Yannick. Barry, please.
Oh, I was putting a thumb up to Yannick's comment. I've commented quite a bit in the chat about this last comment. I also think that the last slide, which aims at counting the social enterprises within the traditional or classic forms of SSE organizations, is a different subject, a different topic than defining the SSE for statistical purposes. For one, I think it poses a few problems conceptually. One of them is to think there's a clear difference between the general interest and mutual interest, which is not very clear. I mean, if you're providing work for people, you don't need to presume if they would have or not have the work otherwise. Let's say they were handicapped or women in a region where women don't work. You could just consider that providing work is part of the general interest. And this is the whole idea of, well, anyway, I can come back on this later on, but I think that we need to concentrate on defining the SSE statistically and not counting the social enterprises within the SSE. If I may, while I have the floor, about private interest and general interest, that is quite different. So we can say private interest is the capital interest, and mutual or general interest is the usage interest. And then you can distinguish two concepts that are clearly different. Is it for capital or is it for usage? But if it is for social purpose, but the CEO or the individual owner takes a lot of the benefits in his wage, in his salary, then we have something that could fit the criteria here, but would not be coherent with the profit distribution constraint, because profit is after you've paid your CEO. So if the CEO takes most of the revenues in his salary or in his benefit in his compensations, then you don't have a limited profit distribution, even though by law or by bylaw it is capped to, let's say, 50%. So I think someone mentioned that Ray, you said it would not be well received by market-oriented social enterprises. Well, then maybe it's not a social economy social enterprise. That would be my point of view.
Thank you. Eduardo, please.
On this, hi everyone. On this issue, I just want to say that I think the problem here is that in most countries, at least the ones that have legal frameworks for social enterprises, they are seen as a special status, as that is given to different legal forms. So the question is, statistically, what we want to capture is to give a number for all social enterprises as understood by each country, in which case we do need to identify within the different families, the main families, if you want, mutual societies, cooperatives, etc., which ones are social enterprises, to give this whole picture of this family or family of families, if you want, or are we considering that we are only counting the social enterprises that do not fit in any other family above? In this case, in Portugal, for instance, they would essentially be what? Companies, private companies. And this would be the only social enterprise that we would have and we would need to identify to have the whole picture of social economy. But we would only give numbers for a portion of what social enterprises would be understood as being. Although in Portugal, we only can count the de facto social enterprises. So this is one of my ideas that I wanted to share, and also I strongly agree with Marie on what concerns the definition of general interest. I think it's very tricky. I would add another dimension to it, which is general interest directly or indirectly. This is also something that we must consider. For instance, in Portugal, all cooperatives are not only seen as non-profit for once, and they all have distribution caps, but we also consider cooperatives and all social economy entities, for that matter, to follow the general interest directly or indirectly. We consider this. So this is why we have also a broader view of what social economy or what we can fit here in social economy. And I would see probably social enterprises as well to be, or we would need to see them or define them or classify them, also considering this point of view. And I also would like to add, although there are a lot of things, there are a lot of ideas. Chiara, you showed so much information. I had some comments here, but I just remember one that I want to share as well. When we are talking about the social mission, I think this is a very important issue. I know that several countries list the type of activities which also can be limited. And we also cannot forget that in most countries, WISEs are de facto social enterprises, and in them, the activities are instrumental, which raises another question. For instance, can an entity that produces weapons but tries to incorporate people in the market, are they social enterprises or not? And even if they are social enterprises, are they social economy? So you see, this, I think I'm raising more questions than solutions, but this is some of the issues we face. And also, and I end here, we have been working on a social enterprise framework for Portugal. We reached several conclusions. We have a proposition for some criteria I can share with you because they're very in line with what has been discussed here, although we followed the 3-dimension of SBI, so the dimension, the social, economic, and governance dimension, but we have some concrete criteria that drinks from several experiences around the world, especially in Europe. And we have, for instance, a criteria for economic presence or market presence that Simel was raising, and even employment presence. So I can share with you this, or I can talk more about this later. I'll just give the floor to everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. David, please.
Yeah. So as a statistician, I initially looked at what was slide 5 in the presentation that was shared with us yesterday or the day before. And I see what looks like a classification of types of statistical units, which could be used to disseminate some statistics. Then I read the presentation, listen to the presentation, and realize that some cooperatives are social enterprises, some associations are social enterprises, etc. So this becomes a problem statistically if we want to produce statistics about each of those categories, because there's overlap between the categories. So if we were to use that for that sort of purpose, we'd need to enterprises that fit, and then we hear that, well, maybe there are some social enterprises that don't fit within the SSE. So it becomes quite a complicated issue that we should think about. Obviously, it's possible to provide recommendations about categories that we can produce. Then we're essentially looking at a population that includes a subset of cooperatives, a subset of associations, a subset of mutual societies, and then some that we create as a new population that is but it means that we can't then use that population to provide statistics about the overall size of the social and solidarity economy. So I think from a statistical perspective, we need to think through some of these issues, whilst at the same time defining things as what they really are. So do we actually need to produce statistics about this broad concept of social enterprises, or do we simply need to say what is included in the social and solidarity economy?
Yeah, thank you. And before giving the floor to Yannick, I'd like to say that today's meeting, we know that we cannot define everything. We cannot decide everything today. So we will have the deep dive meeting with more time, and then some of the issue will be discussed again, the deep dive meeting if we would need some further discussion. And also you can provide your comments or questions through the written the comments on the by mail, whatever form after meeting. So we will ask you to provide the written comment question during the coming week. And yeah, so if you don't have the opportunity to say today, but don't worry about that. So that's I'd like to say. Yannick, please.
Thank you. So I think we are at the core of our work, but we have the opportunity. So just one joke, if I can. There are some flying fish. However, we can't define fish as animals that can fly. So that's what I can say. We can't treat the problem of statistics only with exceptions or counterexample. It's what I want to say.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So concerning this point, let's share a bit conclude this point actually, which was opened by the last slide of the Chiara, and probably Chiara can say something the last one on this point. But I'd like to say that during the preparation of this meeting, we among our team, we discuss about this point, and then what we have in mind actually, as you correctly pointed out, there is two options. One is that we can define first all the SSE the types, then we see the marginal form, which are not covered by the traditional types, but which are considered in the different contexts as part of the SSE called social enterprise. Then we need to see how they can be included or not. So that's the I would say it's more the we consider social enterprise as marginal concept of compared to other traditional one. That's one approach you can do. We need to do. The other idea was that because when we analyze the legislations on social enterprise, they try to define the reality in their way, which is not really SSE itself, but it's quite overlapped. And some countries use the concept of social economy to call this entity, not SSE as we defined. So there was some concern about this point. So today we want to raise this issue, but not have a conclusion. But from our team, we have some direction in mind is that we need to focus on how we can define the SSE first, and then deal with as marginal forms called sometimes social enterprise, as the marginal form. Then the just new category inside of social economy called social enterprise more broader sense. So this is not our objective to define social enterprise, as Chiara already mentioned from the beginning. But we consider that this question might be raised anytime. So we just deal with today, but not to go to that direction. So I just wanted to clarify. So Chiara, you can conclude this part of discussion.
Yeah, you already said a lot. So we know that this is a tricky issue, and we discussed a lot about social enterprises with the ILO staff and also with Marie. So as I said at the beginning of my presentation, so the goal, the aim is to define the perimeter of the SSE. So what is in, what is out? And we discussed a lot the fact that cooperatives, so we have the main families of the social and solidarity economy. And then we have these social enterprises, and we can see social enterprises as a residual part, meaning that we agree on the fact that probably other categories, cooperatives, associations, and mutuals, already include some social enterprises, and we are just filtering other legal forms to complete the picture, to compute the total population of the social and solidarity economy. And this is the main goal, I think, of the project. But while we were talking, so I decided to include the last question, not as a final point and decision made on how to move on, but because I was thinking about that some objections could raise from the fact that we are not giving a complete overview of the social enterprises. I'm not saying we have to. I know it's an issue. We have to reflect this. David, you're right. It cannot be on the same level. So the social enterprise category is not on the same level of the other ones because it's there is an overlap between the legal forms and this category of social enterprise. As Jung Six said, we have more questions probably than answers right now. I put a lot of questions because I wanted to get your inputs. And Eduardo, please feel free to share the documents you're working on, because I think these are the kind of documents we are looking for and we need to improve our work.
Okay, then let's move on to the questions you made. So we can deal with one by one very shortly, but you know, if there would be any
probably I already
we can go.
Yeah, probably I already got some comments and feedbacks about the first question, about the general interest, about the need of specifying some categories of activity, about the fact, Eduardo, you're right, whether you should refer to direct general interest or indirect generalist interest, because if we also talk about indirect general interest, we are talking about a large we are enlarging the perimeter, and so I think we already got some comments about this. About the criterion of non-profit distribution, what do you think? We found out that this is the criterion which is widely used to define and to set an operational rule. Marie, you are right about the fact of indirect constraints should be taken into account. I also mentioned the fact that there are countries, a large number of countries, in which indirect contributions are mentioned, and in these laws, this law explicitly include among indirect distribution of profits also the difference difference in wages among high-level managers and other employees of the organization. Should we explicitly mention also indirect profit distribution within the operational rule or not? We can discuss this also during the deep dive meeting. We will have one day enough to discuss this. I don't know if anyone has comments about the percentage of dividend cap, whether we need an exact percentage, whether the 50% which is mentioned in the SNA could be the percentage to be used. Eduardo, probably.
Eduardo, please.
Cap, from our research, we talked about with several countries that apply their own laws on social enterprises.
Eduardo, please, a little bit louder, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
not used to this call center headset, so sorry. No, we talked with several countries that apply their own social enterprises frameworks and on laws. What we came to conclude is that some of them ended up reviewing, or are planning on reviewing the dividend caps they applied because they were too high. So and it kind of how can I say this in English? It distorted what a social enterprise was supposed to be, and the types of social enterprises that they want in reality to attract with this kind of law. So our proposition so far is just a draft. It would be to be, limited to above 50%, but that's it. So 20, like 51% or something like that. But because I mean I don't know exactly the gold ratio here in terms of percentage, but something more than 75% seems excessive. For instance, total, I think it's not it's not the goal, or it's not what social enterprises are supposed to be when they have a legal form that allows profits and allows redistribution of profit. That's the main issue, and that's it.
Yeah, thank you. And it was a little bit discussed already, but I'd like to know whether, because some countries patronage refund is considered like profit, so they when the money is distributed, they just consider like profit. But some countries, the patronage refund would be exclude from the, although the tax fiscal the logic include the patronage refund as profit. So cooperative and the member who receive the patronage refund, they need to pay some the income tax or whatever. But for there is some unclear the area about this the nature of the patronage refund. So I just wonder whether which country consider patronage refund as excluded from calculation of the profit. Or so for example, if cooperative distributed the surplus over 50%, but in form of the patronage fund, then can we consider them like cooperatives already in anyway in the SSE, but just as a curiosity, but how the patronage fund can be considered?
Just to let you know, in the laws on social enterprises, in the 18 countries I analyzed, there are two countries. One is Italy, and the other one I don't remember, but I can check. There is so two laws say that explicit say that patronage refunds are not considered profits. I don't know if you know any other cases of national law.
So I think it should be also the very interesting point to also for the other technical working group on the measuring economic contribution of cooperatives. We have the same kind of the discussion on this point. So it would be some connecting issue between two technical working group as well. And other input on this. So I think the issue is related to these two questions as well. So how we can see the combination of the dividend cap and SLR, or just one would be enough, and then the threshold issue we already mentioned. Is there anyone who
in the Philippines? Is texting in the chat.
Okay. I cannot see the chat, but yeah, please.
And Jesus in France.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. And so let's move the last probably question Kara made is about democratic and the participative governance issue. So is that? So
yeah,
Kara,
probably this is a more general question. It's not referred only to social enterprises, because as I said, it's an issue that concerns not all the non-member based organizations that can be considered part of SSE, including, for example, foundations. I don't know if anyone has comments on this, or maybe we can discuss this during the deep dive meeting, also talking about foundations.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the Chiara, after this meeting, we need to formulate all your question in a more, the easier way to share with the members. And then they can also contribute by answering the questions and also giving the comments, whatever they need. So in that way, you can collect their thought more, more deeply the thought input from the written comments. Yeah. Okay, so Chiara, do you have any other question you made? I think it's more or less all questions.
No, I have already new questions, but probably for the deep dive meeting in October.
Okay. So stop sharing. Thank you very much. And is there any special? We have already over more than 1 hour and a half, so I know that we are very tired. So, do you have any final input, question, comments? So you will have the opportunity to the bring your input and questions after the meeting. So. But if there is any hard issue, okay, then now I think we can conclude the meeting discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for your contribution, and many thanks in advance your future contribution for the project. And I think this is all for today's meeting. And before we conclude our meeting, as we usually do, I want to propose take a picture. So Sujan, so please everyone turn on the camera on, and Sujan, could you help me out to take the picture of the meeting?
Now, just hold on. I need to just change my view of my screen.
Yeah,
so I can see everybody. Okay. Then yes, now I can see everybody. So you can smile. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for the participation again, and we are looking forward to.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, see you in Bordeaux at the end of October in person.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Mary.
Are we
Bye.
okay?
Yeah. Bye, Annie.